Hello and welcome to Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast number 23. This week we have feedback, a new webpage, and our continuing look at the Doctor and the actors who played him with 7th Doctor Sylvester McCoy.
Come here, you scrumptious little beauty. A box?
Doctor, what is it?
I've got mail.
Thanks to all those of you who left feedback after last week's show. Let's start with the Facebook page. Doctor Who has been going on for nearly 50 years, now keep it up, great job. Awesome page title, guys. And they said, I really enjoyed that. I loved all the detail you put into it. Well, thanks for that. I did respond to the post, but it's only fair to mention to you all that I gleaned the vast majority of my information for these podcasts from either Wikipedia or TARDIS Wiki, editing it according to the needs of the podcast at the time. Though it would also be fair on me to say that some of the information does come from my memory of the character I'm recording about at the time. Our next bit of feedback comes from Daniel Ryder, who said, I always learn something from these podcasts. Great stuff. One of my favourite roles for Louise Jameson, by the way, was Adrian Mole's mother in The Diary of Adrian Mole back in the 80s. Thanks again for your feedback, Daniel, and for furnishing me with some Louise Jameson info that I was completely unaware of. Next up, we have Douglas J. Harkins, who comments, Great podcast, gotta love that Leela. I think they named the Leela in Futurama after her. In the Futurama episode where Leela is dealing with obsession, they have the 4th Doctor come out of the space whale she was obsessed with catching. Again, something I had no idea of about the wonderful Doctor Who Savage. Lastly for the feedback this week is James Morrell, with his comments, Leela is one of my favourite companions. Brilliant podcast as always, well done. Thanks again, James, for your encouraging words, and yes, I can see why Leela would be anyone's favourite companion. And that's all for feedback this week. As always, you can leave your feedback on the podcast on this post, or you can post on Theta Sigma's Doctor Who page on Facebook, or email me at respectthething@outlook.com. And there is now another way that you can let me know your thoughts, but more of that later in the show.
I'm the Doctor. Haven't we met?
Sylvester McCoy was born Percy James Patrick Kent Smith in Dunoon, Scotland, to an Irish mother and an English father. He was raised primarily in Dunoon, and in his youth trained for the priesthood, but gave this up and spent time working in the insurance industry. He also worked in the Roundhouse box office for a time, where he was discovered by Ken Campbell. McCoy came to prominence as a member of the comedy act The Ken Campbell Roadshow. His best-known act was as a stuntman character called Sylvester McCoy. In a play entitled An Evening with Sylvester McCoy, where his stunts included putting a fork and nails up his nose and stuffing ferrets down his trousers. As a joke, the programme notes listed Sylvester McCoy as played by Sylvester McCoy. And after a reviewer missed the joke and assumed that Sylvester McCoy was a real person, Kent Smith adopted this as his stage name. Some years later, McCoy added an R to the end of Sylvester. Notable television appearances before the Doctor included roles in Vision On and O-Man in Jigsaw and Tiswas. He also appeared in Eureka, often suffering from the inventions of Wilf Lunn. McCoy also portrayed in one-man shows on the stage 2 famous movie comedians, Stan Laurel and Buster Keaton. He also appeared as Henry Birdie Bowers in the 1985 television serial about Scott's last Antarctic expedition, The Last Place on Earth. He also had a small role in the 1979 film Dracula, opposite Laurence Olivier and Donald Pleasance, and has sung with the Welsh National Opera. McCoy became the 7th Doctor after taking over the lead role in Doctor Who in 1987 from Colin Baker. He remained on the series until it ended in 1989. As Baker declined the invitation to film the regeneration scene, McCoy briefly wore a wig and appeared as the 6th Doctor. He played the Doctor in the 1993 charity special Dimensions in Time, and again in 1996, appearing in the beginning of the Doctor Who television movie. McCoy is thus acknowledged as the actor who, in a way, played the Doctor for a longer period of time than any other. In his first series, McCoy, a comedy actor, portrayed the character with a degree of clown-like humour, but script editor Andrew Cartmel soon changed that when fans argued that the character and the plots were becoming increasingly lightweight. The 7th Doctor developed into a much darker figure than any of his earlier incarnations, manipulating people like chess pieces and always seeming to be playing a deeper game. A distinguishing feature of McCoy's performances was his manner of speech. He used his natural slight Scottish accent and rolled his R's. At the start of his tenure, he used proverbs and sayings adapted to his own ends, although this characteristic was soon phased out during the later, darker series of his tenure. In 1990, readers of Doctor Who magazine voted McCoy's Doctor Best Doctor over perennial favourite Tom Baker. McCoy was the last lead actor to have his face in the Doctor Who opening titles until Matt Smith appeared in the 2012 Christmas special, and the last incarnation to have question marks on his costume. McCoy's television roles since Doctor Who have included Michael Sam's in the 1997 telemovie Beyond Fear. He also continues to play the Seventh Doctor in a series of audio plays by Big Finish Productions. In 1988, while still playing in Doctor Who, McCoy also presented a BBC children's programme called What's Your Story? He had also acted extensively in theatre, in productions as diverse as pantomime and Molière. He played Grandpa Jock in John McGrath's A Satire of the Four Estates at the Edinburgh Festival, and also Snuff in the macabre BBC Radio 4 comedy series The Cabaret of Dr. Caligari. McCoy was the second choice to play Bilbo Baggins in the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings film trilogy. In 1991, he presented the Doctor Who video documentary release The Hartnell Years, showcasing selected episodes of missing stories from the First Doctor's era. On stage, he appeared as the Sheriff of Nottingham in a musical version of Robin Hood at the Broadway Theatre Lewisham in London. He also appeared as the lawyer Dowling in a BBC production of The History of Tom Jones, a Foundling. In 2001, McCoy appeared in Paul Sellers' asylum comedy The Dead Move Fast, as part of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, playing Dr. Mallinson. McCoy has performed with Sandy Toksvig in the Lovely Russell concert in June 2008, and has appeared with the Royal Shakespeare Company in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, and King Lear in 2007, playing the Fool to Ian McKellen's Lear, a performance which made use of McCoy's ability to play the spoons. In 2008, he performed with Carl Rosa Company in a production of Gilbert and Sullivan's The Mikado, playing the title role. Despite being set in Japan, he was able to demonstrate his ability to play the spoons by using his fan. In 2009, McCoy played the character of Mr. Mushnick in the Chocolate Factory's production of Little Shop of Horrors. He also made guest appearances in the television series The Bill, the Rab C. Nesbitt episode Father as Rab's mentally ill brother Gash Sr., and the Still Game episode Oot. In October 2008, he had a minor guest role as an injured ventriloquist on Casualty. In the same month, McCoy guest starred in an episode of the BBC soap opera Doctors, playing an actor who had once played a time-travelling hero of children's television called the Amazing Lollipop Man. This role was apparently written as a tribute to McCoy. McCoy returned to the role of the Seventh Doctor in 1997, recording new audio for the video game Doctor Who: Destiny of the Doctors. He began filming for The Hobbit, a 3-part adaptation of the book, in spring 2011, in which he portrays the wizard Radagast the Brown, alongside fellow King Lear actor Ian McKellen, who reprises his role as Gandalf. Although the actor of Radagast is only alluded to in The Hobbit, and only a minor character in Lord of the Rings, the part has been expanded for the films.
Your species has the most amazing capacity for self-deception, matched only by its ingenuity when trying to destroy itself.
But what of the character of the Seventh Doctor himself? In his first season, the Seventh Doctor started out as a comical character, engaging in Dundrearyisms, such as Time and Tide Melt the Snowman, playing the spoons, and making pratfalls, but later started to develop a darker nature and raise the profound question of who the Doctor actually is. The Seventh Doctor has the most profound change in attitude of any of the Doctor's incarnations, beginning as someone bumbling to the extent of putting himself in danger, but not at the cost of his overall great intelligence and benevolent intentions, and progressing to a driven, dark game master, whose plans to defeat his adversaries, both old and new, would play out across space and time. He generally played an affable, curious, knowledgeable, easygoing, excitable and charming aired person. However, as he began to choose his battles and keep a tighter grip on his secrets, from his plans to his very identity, he also presented a more serious, contemplative, secretive, wistful and manipulative side, with undercurrents of mischief and authority, constantly giving the impression that there was more to him than met the eye. As something of a showman, the Doctor would sometimes act like a buffoon, usually preferring to manipulate events from behind the scenes, much like his second incarnation. He was prepared to play the fool in order to trick his foes into underestimating him, inevitably leading to their defeat at his hands. He was an adept physical performer and deployed a repertoire of magic tricks, illusions and escape artistry to this effect as part of his plans. Although his more obvious whimsical tendencies disappeared over a period of time, particularly the spoons playing, he maintained a fondness for idiosyncratic speeches that occasionally referred to literature, ordinary places, and even food and drink, amidst the weightier concerns on his mind. He was empathetic to his friends, and even his enemies, such as Helen A., and somewhat melancholic at times, such as during Mel's departure and before his decision to eradicate the Daleks, but now placed greater burdens upon himself in the name of protecting the universe. This may have led him to shroud his true intentions in mystery, and the use of sleight of hand as benefit his fondness and performance, in effect subverting his more light-hearted qualities to complement and enhance his heroic and darker ones. Given the Seventh Doctor's appearance and stature, he was surprisingly capable of both directly and indirectly taking control of situations involving strangers, using his greater intelligence to assess and direct events. Concerned with the bigger picture, he would sometimes overlook the finer details in his planning, both prepared and improvised, and would sometimes have fatal results and no consequences. When he acted to end threats, it was usually a ruthless, destructive and final manoeuvre. He was also not above hiding the truth from his friends and allies and using them in order to complete his schemes and gambits. His tendency to reveal only select information to his companion Ace, as well as anyone else around them, was utilised both in her education and in their adventures, as if he were the only one who should know all the answers and the others should come to their own conclusions. At 2 points he even abused Ace's trust in him, once to develop her as a person and again to keep her alive, on both occasions freeing her from the evil influences that had haunted her during her life. While on one of those adventures he showed great difficulty in admitting his foreknowledge of the situation's severity to her when she finally confronted him. In spite of his immense fondness for her, and her for him, he often frustrated her with his secretive nature, as his alien behaviour, the great importance of his objectives, especially his focus on obliterating enemies from his past, and his strong desire to both educate and protect her, would lead him to keep even her in the dark, and would even subordinate her feelings towards him in order to succeed in their battles. Fortunately, their close, almost familial bond was likely what helped Ace in moving past the feelings of betrayal she sometimes felt towards the Doctor, particularly as he genuinely had her best interests at heart. In fact, while he had appeared to be an unassuming figure, fond of performing magic tricks and displaying notable showmanship, the Seventh Doctor was actually quite a powerful and calculating man, for he would use his friends and foes alike as pawns in his elaborate chess game against evil. As Ace herself put it, he was well devious. In a direct contrast to his third incarnation, this Doctor was absolutely opposed to violence of any sort, as demonstrated in stories such as Battlefield, where he stops a battle merely by ordering the warriors to desist. And he was totally against the use of firearms, to the extent of talking down a soldier ordered to execute him in the Happiness Patrol by emphasising the easiness of the kill versus the enormity of ending a life. Although he also proved capable of rendering a man unconscious with a touch in both Battlefield and Survival, in keeping with his established habits, he would use gadgetry of his own invention when the situation called for it, but never as his final gambit. Instead, he almost always managed to talk his enemies into submission, often to suicide, perhaps most memorably in Remembrance of the Daleks, where he taunts the seemingly last Dalek in existence until it self-destructs, or in Ghostlight, where he defeats the malevolent light by ramming home the folly of trying to prevent evolution. He employs variations of this talk-to-death tactic in Dragonfire, Silver Nemesis and The Curse of Fenric, although primarily to manipulate opponents to guarantee the outcome in his favour.
Where to now, Ace?
Home.
Home?
The TARDIS.
Yes, the TARDIS.
There are worlds out there where the sky is burning, where the seas asleep and the rivers dream. People made of smoke and cities made of song. Some of there's danger, some of there's injustice, and somewhere else the tea's getting cold. Come on, Ace, we've got work to do.
And that's all we have time for in this week's show. As always, thanks for listening, and please feel free to share your thoughts about the podcast on this post, on Theta Sigma's Doctor Who page on Facebook, and now you can tweet me at Theta Sigma numeral 12. Yes, that's right, I'm finally on Twitter as well. I'll be posting the previous podcasts at a rate of one per day until we're up to date, and then posting them weekly as I do here on Facebook, as well as posting linked photos and linked questions and articles relating to that week's podcast topic. So please encourage your friends to follow me at Theta Sigma 12 and leave all their thoughts and feedback about the podcast there too, if they want to. Next time on Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast, we'll be continuing our Sometime series looking at the Master and the actors who've played that part with the TV Master, Eric Roberts. So until then...
Well, goodbye, my boy. You did quite well. Quite well. It's reassuring to know that my future is in safe hands.
Thank you for listening to Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all copyright and property of the BBC, and no infringement is intended.